how should an habeas corpus work according to U.S. law?
Well, it's according to the United States Constitution. Habeas corpus means that the executive branch must offer any person detained an opportunity and a hearing to discredit the alleged legal basis for the detention. It's called the writ of habeas corpus. It can be suspended, but only by Congress. Congress has not suspended the writ of habeas corpus. And it can only do so in times of war, where Congress has enacted a declaration, or we are subject to an actual invasion. Now, despite Mr. Trump's statement to the contrary, the government of Venezuela is not invading the United States. Indeed, if it were, we would have 31 NATO partners that would be coming defending the United States against Venezuela. So there has to be a credible basis for deciding that we've been invaded. But I go back to repeat, only Congress can suspend the writ of habeas corpus. The president cannot do it unilaterally.
And Bruce, at the same time, there are legal precedents from the Supreme Court that detention and removal of immigrants is not, should follow due process. So how do you argue, from the side of the government, how do you argue to deny those rights that are on the U.S. Constitution?
Well, that's why the government is losing every one of their cases, because there isn't anything to argue. They're making a political rather than a legal argument. In my judgment, they will lose every single case on the theory that you've articulated. They simply say, we unilaterally are saying that you're not entitled to rights even if you're a person. Now, I want to underscore a point that I think Mr. Trump was hinting at when he said, well, there's so many wrongful aliens, illegal aliens, we can't have hearings. The United States Constitution and due process is predicated on the moral principle. It's better that a few wrongful people escape their consequences than that the innocent suffer. So if we have to choose between probabilities, we'd err on the side of making sure no innocents suffer, even if it means a few bad apples escape. And I want to remind the viewers, we tried this before without hearings during World War II. We illegally incarcerated 120,000 loyal Japanese Americans without any hearings of loyalty, assuming them all were guilty of sabotage or espionage. Years later, we apologized, said it was unconstitutional, and paid reparations. So that's a good example of what happens when you don't have hearings. 120,000 errors.
Bruce, I'd like to focus on this case. It's a well-known case from World War II, and how do you go back from there, right? We interned suspected aliens that were fighting for Japan. How do you go back to the apology and so on? Because at this point, it looks like there's no light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, we not only apologized, we paid reparations, gave money to compensate for the wrongful detentions of 120,000. And I want to say as well that in the more recent efforts of the Trump administration to deport without any hearings, a U.S. Court of Appeals judge noted accurately, Nazis who were alleged aliens during World War II got more due process than the aliens that now we are deporting. Really? We're assuming that they're worse than the Nazis? It shows you how discrepant Mr. Trump's approach is from our historical devotion to due process and fairness.
And Bruce, you're citing two presidents. You're citing a lot of evidence and tradition, above all, that points in one direction, but the administration continues with this strategy and will double down. For as much as we know, it looks like they're going to double down. Why? Is there any legal argument or any legal escape or wiggle room to succeed with this strategy?
No, there is no legal room. This is a political gesture. Mr. Trump believes he's got a mandate, an electoral mandate, to deport illegals, and therefore, even if he loses in courts, he'll just blame it on the courts and say, I did my best. He doesn't understand that you cannot have a political campaign based on the theory that you're going to violate the Constitution. He's already said recently that he thinks complying with the Constitution is optional. It's not an option. It's a mandate. It's a requirement for an oath of office to become President of the United States. And I believe that Mr. Trump is doing this because he thinks it will be politically popular even if he loses every single case. And he will state, we need to impeach these judges. They're blocking me from doing this. He thinks it's not going to lose him political support. I think he's wrong in the long run. I think the American people understand there's no firewall between deporting somebody that is said without any hearing is here illegally and deporting citizens. We already have a half dozen or more cases where citizens of the United States have been wrongfully deported, and it's going to be worse if there are no hearings.
Bruce, I've got a few seconds, but in legal terms, how do you expect this to continue now?
I think ultimately the United States Supreme Court will affirm the lower court decisions, and I don't think Mr. Trump is going to flout the U.S. Supreme Court. He's got 3 justices already who've already ruled that his removal of Abrego Garcia was illegal, that under the Alien Enemies Act, he cannot remove alleged wrongful aliens without due process of law in a hearing. And I think that's a foreshadow of what's going to happen in a few weeks' time or earlier. And Mr. Trump is going to back down, in my judgment. But he'll blame the situation on the courts, and his crowd will then cling to his, I think, fantasies that illegal aliens are destroying the country.
Bruce Fein, thank you for your insights. Greatly appreciated.